This work is a quiet and steady exploration of presence, written in a single unified voice that speaks from stillness rather than toward achievement. It's not a guide, not a performance, and not a method, but rather an unfolding rhythm, an inward breath that slows everything down, designed to be listened to or read in peaceful reflection. It carries the tone of something remembered rather than learned. Each chapter moves gently, without urgency or instruction, inviting a deeper experience of what has always been true beneath the surface of thought. There is no striving here, only return, no effort, only awareness. What arises from this space is not something earned, but something revealed. Let it settle. Let it resonate. Let it simply be. Chapter 1. The Stillness of True Presence. Being is not something to achieve. It is what you already are. The realization is not found in effort or striving, but in the stillness that precedes thought, identity, and any concept of self. You are the still presence behind all appearances. There is no becoming magnetic. You are already magnetic by the very nature of your existence. The essence of your being emanates effortlessly, and what others refer to as magnetism is merely the reflection of your alignment with the truth of who you are. There is no need to search for this essence, for it is not separate from you. What the world perceives as charisma or charm, you experience simply as presence. When you abide in your natural state, free from the voice that insists on fixing, adjusting, or performing, you return to your original awareness. This awareness is prior to the mind, prior to the individual identity that attempts to take control. In the silence, you remember what has always been true. You are already whole. The person in mind, that mental image constructed by memory, beliefs, and external conditioning, tries to interfere. It suggests action. It calculates steps. It demands improvement. But this person in mind is not you. You are the observer of that activity. You are the stillness that notices the movement of thoughts. The person in mind is the illusion, not the essence. Abide in awareness and witness what unfolds. Harmony reveals itself not as something to reach for, but as the natural state of existence. Relationships begin to reflect the peace within. Conversations synchronize with your inner knowing. People seem to echo your thoughts before you speak them. This is not magic or manipulation. It is the spontaneous coherence that arises when the surface mind no longer distorts perception. What you are seeing is not coincidence. It is reality as it truly is, undistorted, interconnected, harmonious. There's no need to label these connections or explain them. Some may call it thought transmission, others a magnetic field. But those are merely descriptions of something far simpler and more profound. Being. In being, all things align. In being, all things reflect your own clarity back to you. The words others speak, the expressions on their faces, even the energy in a room, these become mirrors of the stillness within. This alignment is not something to manipulate or reproduce. It is not a tool to gain control. It is a side effect of resting in your essence. There is no striving, no strategizing, no need to chase. When you know who you are, you stop looking for evidence of your worth. You no longer seek validation from the world, because the world begins to reflect the truth of your being naturally. In stillness, the external becomes peaceful. In silence, you see that everything is already in its place. You are divine perfection, not metaphorically, but actually. This perfection is not measured by appearances or achievements. It is the quiet stability that persists in the background of all experience. When you recognize it in yourself, you begin to see it in others. They appear to open in your presence, to soften. Your being invites others to remember theirs. The presence you offer becomes enough. You're not doing anything, yet everything changes. You speak less, but meaning carries further. You act less, but the effect multiplies. There is no need to fix anything. The desire to become magnetic falls away, because you are no longer a seeker. The seeker existed only in the mind. The seeker believed it lacked something, but being lacks nothing. It is whole. From that fullness, what the world calls personal magnetism arises, not from effort, but from surrender. Not from performance, but from stillness. You witness people gravitate toward you, drawn not by what you do, but by who you are. They may not understand why they feel peace around you. They may not be able to explain it, and yet they will say, again and again, that your presence is calming, energizing, joyful. This is not because you have changed anything. It is because you have removed the interference. Being, by its very nature, is radiant. The thoughts that claim otherwise, the thoughts that whisper that you must earn your place, that you must perfect your image, are not your thoughts. They are echoes of conditioning, relics of the illusion. They belong to what has been called the old self, the false self. And even those thoughts, when observed without identification, dissolve. They cannot withstand the light of truth. As you rest in being, they appear less often and with less weight. The world no longer holds power over you. No external situation needs to change. What changes is perception. What changes is your identification. You no longer confuse the passing content of thought with who you are. You see that you are the space in which all thought arises and dissolves. You are that still I am presence, undisturbed, unshakable. And from this presence flows peace, love, bliss. Not because you summon them, but because they are the fragrance of truth. You begin to notice the subtle ways in which life reflects this. Relationships become smoother. Work becomes lighter. Encounters become sacred. Not because you control them, but because you release control. There is no fear of outcomes, no attachment to roles. Just the effortless play of form in the field of being. And all along, there is the knowing. I am. Not I am this or I am that. Just I am. That simple, silent knowing that has no opposite. In that knowing, all questions fall away. All doubts lose their grip. You remember the truth, not as a concept, but as your natural condition. You are already that. You have always been that. Chapter 2. Already magnetic, already whole. There is no beginning to being. You were not created in the moment of a decision or an action. You are, and have always been. Before thought arises, before identity takes shape, before effort is imagined, there is being. That is your nature. That is the quiet, unshakable truth beneath all experience. It has no name and needs no title, yet the world feels it. Others may call it magnetism, but you know it as peace. You do not generate presence. Presence is not summoned. It simply is. And when you relax into what is, you recognize there is nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing more to fix. You are already whole. The suggestion that something must be done to complete yourself is an illusion created by the mind, which always assumes lack. But you are not the mind. You are not its assumptions. You are the space in which those assumptions come and go. You are already magnetic, because you are already whole. Others may reflect this wholeness back to you. They may respond to your stillness, your gaze, your tone, your unspoken knowing. But these are not tools to control or manage. They are natural expressions of the truth within. You do not perform presence. You do not manufacture resonance. When you rest in being, these qualities arise without effort. They are not strategies. They are echoes of the truth, manifesting through form. You don't need to teach people how to perceive you. Their experience of you is shaped by your own knowing. If you know yourself as whole, they will feel it. If you rest in your completeness, others will feel complete in your presence. And they won't know why. They may say it's your calmness or your energy or your words. But you know it's none of these alone. It is simply being, mirrored through form. It is simply the stillness within, made visible. Trying to be magnetic breaks the spell. The moment you shift into trying, you leave being and enter performance. And performance is always rooted in lack. It is the subtle declaration that something is missing. Something must be added. But nothing is missing. You are not lacking. Your presence is enough and always has been. This truth does not need to be believed. It only needs to be known. Belief lives in the mind. Knowing lives in the silence before mind. Belief argues, knowing rests. You do not need to convince yourself that you are magnetic. You simply rest as you are, and the rest unfolds. Thought may still arise, attempting to convince you otherwise, but you're not thought. You are the witness of thought, and when you remember that, the noise dissolves. Others may change in your presence. They may shift, soften, open. This is not because you did anything. It is because the illusion of separation becomes thin when presence is strong. In the presence of being, the masks begin to fall away. The roles and defenses collapse. Others are reminded, not by your words but by your being, that they too are whole. And this reflection is the greatest gift you can offer. Personal magnetism, then, is not a trait to develop, but a natural consequence of presence. The more you remember who you are, the more the world reflects it back to you. Not because you worked for it, not because you claimed it, but because it has always been that way. You simply stopped blocking the view. You may notice people saying what you were just thinking. You may experience conversations that feel like music, synchronized, flowing, without resistance. This is not a trick of the mind. It is not mental projection. It is the resonance of being. It is the harmony of consciousness recognizing itself. It does not need to be understood, only experience. And when it is experienced, it leaves no question. There is a clarity, a purity that cannot be faked. You are not creating it. You are not engineering it. You are simply not interfering. That's all it takes. To stop interfering. To stop pretending to be someone. To stop reaching outside yourself for what you already are. That is when magnetism becomes effortless. That is when connection becomes sacred. You are not an idea. You are not a goal. You are not becoming. You are being. The idea that you must become is the mind's distraction, and as long as you identify with the one who is becoming, you will overlook the one who's already is. When you abandon the seeker, you discover the source. And that source is not something you find. It is what you already are. So let the idea of improvement dissolve. Let the structure of becoming fall away. All that's left is presence. Pure, unfiltered, radiant presence. And that is magnetic. Not because it tries to be, but because it cannot help but be. You don't need to do anything. Just rest. Just return. Just remember. You are already magnetic. You are already whole. Chapter 3. The Power Beyond the Person. In the quiet spaces between thoughts, you begin to recognize the difference between the person and the presence. The person is the identity created through habit, memory, and narrative. It carries stories of what you've done, what you've failed to do, and what you believe you should become. It is shaped by the past and projects into the future. It is always trying, always adjusting, always grasping. But the presence behind it is untouched. The power you seek is not in the person. It is not in the roles you've adopted, the strategies you've followed, or the beliefs you've inherited. True power lives in awareness itself, in the pure seeing that has never been touched by success or failure. This is not theoretical. It is your constant reality, even if unnoticed. The person may speak loudly, but the presence is what is real. When you rest in that presence, the world begins to respond differently. There's a shift, not in what you say or do, but in what you no longer carry. You no longer need to convince, impress, or persuade. People sense this. They feel the absence of striving. They feel the stillness that surrounds you, and something in them quiets in response. This is the silent power of being. Others may call it energy or charisma. They may point to your confidence or tone or gaze, but you are not performing any of these. You are simply being. The person in mind is no longer trying to modify the external world to compensate for a felt lack. The sense of lack dissolves in the light of being. What remains is the effortless unfolding of presence into form. You may notice things begin to align. Conversations flow without friction. Encounters happen with perfect timing. Opportunities seem to appear just as you need them. This is not coincidence. It is coherence. It is the outward reflection of inward alignment. The more you release identification with the person in mind, the more naturally you experience harmony. This is not because you have gained anything, but because you have stopped resisting what already is. The person in mind will still attempt to reassert control. It will whisper that something is missing, that something needs fixing. But you no longer listen to that voice. You recognize it as an echo, not a truth. And with recognition, the illusion fades. It loses its grip. What's left is awareness, pure, stable, ever-present. In this state, you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to win anyone over. You simply are. And being is enough. It always has been. And now that you remember, it becomes visible. The magnetism others speak of is not something you send out. It is something they feel when you're no longer projecting. It's not a signal. It's a presence. This presence doesn't belong to a person. It is not a trait you can claim or possess. It is the natural quality of awareness itself. It is universal, indivisible. It just happens to express itself through the form you call you. And the more you recognize this, the less you identify with the structure of personality. You begin to see the person in mind not as your true self, but as a temporary interface, useful but not ultimate. From this recognition, effort dissolves, not because you have given up, but because you see there is nothing to resist. Being does not strive. Being does not grasp. It flows. It reveals. It harmonizes. And you, as being, do the same. You witness the power of awareness taking form, and you do not interfere. That is the essence of true magnetism. You begin to experience the world as a reflection of your inner stillness. The more still you are, the more clearly the world mirrors back your essence. People speak words that match your inner truth. Situations arise that support your natural rhythm. There is no effort in this, only alignment. What you once called coincidence, you now recognize as coherence. Even your thoughts begin to change, not because you are trying to control them, but because the mind itself is being renewed. It becomes luminous in the light of being. All thoughts rooted in lack and fear fall away. In their place arise insights, clarity, peace. The mind is not the enemy. It is the mirror. And when you no longer identify with its distortions, it reflects truth. You no longer seek conditions to validate your being. You no longer need others to tell you who you are. You no longer chase after signs or signals. You simply remain. You simply witness. And in that witnessing, the illusion of separation dissolves. There is no other. There is only being, playing through form. So, when someone says you are magnetic, you smile. Not in pride, but in recognition. Not because you tried to become magnetic, but because you stopped trying altogether. What they are sensing is not your performance, it is your presence. It is the truth that shines when the false is no longer maintained. This is the power beyond the person. It cannot be taught, only remembered. It cannot be manufactured, only allowed. And once you allow it, once you stop resisting it, everything changes. Not because you changed the world, but because you finally saw it as it truly is. Chapter 4. Being before becoming. You were never meant to strive your way into wholeness. The truth of who you are is not found at the end of a process or a path. It is not the outcome of self-improvement. It is not earned, it is not built. Being precedes becoming. Being is not a reward. It is the foundation. The person in mind insists otherwise. It says you must first prove yourself, align yourself, change yourself. It suggests there is a path to follow, a structure to build, a version of yourself to create. It looks for signs that you are progressing. It clings to effort and measures. But the person in mind is the illusion. What it seeks through doing, being, already is. Let go of the narrative of becoming. Abandon the idea that you are a work in progress. You are not unfinished. You are not lacking. You are not waiting to be made complete. You are not moving toward a final version of yourself. All of that is the mind's construction. What is true needs no improvement. The essence of your being cannot be refined. It is already full, already radiant, already complete. There is peace in knowing that nothing more is required. You don't need to take one more step. You don't need to resolve anything. There is no mountain to climb. You simply remain as you are. You drop the identity that is always in motion. You release the self that is always performing. And in the quiet after letting go, there is only being. Being doesn't resist what arises. It doesn't argue with the moment. It doesn't defend against change or cling to the past. It simply witnesses. In that witnessing, all effort dissolves. The resistance that once filled your body fades. The sense of pressure, of not yet enough, dissolves. You're no longer trying to become. You're no longer attempting to shape yourself into something you are not. You are. And you know that you are. This knowing transforms everything. Conversations become lighter. Movement becomes effortless. Tasks lose their weight. People appear to meet you in harmony, not because you positioned yourself perfectly, but because you no longer need them to be anything other than what they are. Without resistance, the world flows. Without control, the world aligns. This is not about pretending nothing matters. This is not passive surrender. It is active stillness. It is the quiet certainty that what is enough. It is not disengagement. It is deep presence. It is being so fully here that no moment is rejected, no feeling denied, no outcome resisted. It is the courage to stop becoming and simply be. You will still speak, still move, still act. But the source of those actions changes. They no longer arise from lack. They are no longer strategies to solve the imagined problem of not being enough. Instead, they arise from clarity. They arise from fullness. You do not act to fix yourself. You act as an expression of the self that needs no fixing. There is no longer a need to manipulate appearances. You do not need to appear magnetic, appear wise, appear strong. You are no longer concerned with appearances. You are no longer trying to control perception. You are no longer working to manage impressions. And in that freedom, your presence becomes more powerful than ever. People feel safe with you. They feel seen, not because you are watching them, but because you are no longer hiding. They feel heard, not because you say the right words, but because you no longer speak through the filter of insecurity. Your presence speaks louder than your words. Your silence carries more truth than your explanations. And this is the paradox. The less you try to be magnetic, the more magnetic you become. The less you try to lead, the more people want to follow. The less you try to stand out, the more your essence becomes undeniable. Let becoming go. Let the pursuit of some final image dissolve. Even the desire to be spiritual, to be enlightened, to be awakened, let that go too. These are just more masks, more identities. They are new costumes for the same illusion. There is nothing to be. You already are. And in that stillness, in that surrender, there is nothing missing. There never was. You are not becoming magnetic. You are realizing you already are. You are not becoming whole. You are recognizing that you've never been anything else. This recognition does not come through effort. It comes through release. And in that release, the world no longer feels heavy. The mind no longer feels noisy. You no longer feel divided. You do not seek approval anymore. You do not need to be seen a certain way. You are not looking for confirmation from the outside. What used to be hunger becomes contentment. What used to be striving becomes presence. And what used to be a question, how do I become, no longer needs an answer. Being before becoming. Always. Let this be your return. Chapter 5. The Silent Witness of Harmony. There is a subtle transformation that takes place when you no longer try to shape the world to reflect who you think you should be. Instead, the world begins to mirror who you truly are. This is not the result of force or calculation. It is the natural rhythm of harmony, echoing outward from within. When you rest as a silent witness of all things, you begin to see how effortlessly life aligns itself. People speak words you were just about to say. Situations unfold with perfect timing. Emotional storms settle in your presence, not because you tried to cause it, but because you cease resisting what is. In that absence of resistance, peace expands. The still I am presence is not some mystical ideal. It is your everyday awareness when not distracted by the voice in the mind. The witness does not react. The witness does not chase. The witness simply sees. And in that seeing, a kind of invisible light is cast into every moment. That light is what others feel. That light is what others call your magnetism. It does not matter what you look like, what your voice sounds like, or how persuasive your words may be. All of these are secondary to the energy of being itself. This energy, this presence, cannot be faked or fabricated. It is the soft power of authenticity. It is the kind of power that transforms without speaking, leads without commanding, loves without needing. There is no striving in this. The person in mind, always measuring itself, always trying to adjust and fine-tune its performance, simply dissolves in the light of awareness. There is no need for it. There is no function left for it to fulfill. The desire to be impressive, to be liked, to be admired, these are the burdens of the false self. They fall away when the true self is known. As you abide in presence, you begin to notice that even your thoughts become harmonious. The inner dialogue no longer argues with reality. It no longer resists what is. You don't have to silence your thoughts. They simply quiet on their own. They become reflections of your stillness rather than interruptions. And when they don't, you don't resist them. You watch them come and go, like clouds drifting across a clear sky. You are not the clouds, you are the sky. Others begin to notice a calmness in you that cannot be explained. They may call it confidence. They may describe it as grounding. But they are only naming the reflection of their own being, awakened in your presence. When you are still, others remember their stillness. When you are free, others feel free. You need not say a word. The peace you carry does the speaking. What once seemed like problems begin to dissolve. What once seemed like effort now feels like flow. Even challenges become softer as you meet them not with resistance, but with openness. You are no longer acting from the illusion of control. You are responding from the wisdom of awareness. You are no longer trying to manage life. You are aligned with it. You begin to see the perfection in things. Not the superficial kind of perfection based on external criteria, but the deeper kind, divine perfection. That which is whole and complete, even in apparent imperfection. That which needs no improvement, no addition. You recognize this in yourself, and then you recognize it everywhere. This is not about escaping the world. It is not about detaching or avoiding. It is about being so present, so still, that the world can no longer deceive you into thinking you are separate from it. You stop reacting to the outer because you are rooted in the inner. You stop seeking alignment because you realize alignment is what you are. Your relationships transform. You speak less, but understand more. You offer less advice, but give more peace. There is no more posturing, no more trying to play a role. People feel this, and they begin to show up more honestly too. Not because you asked them to, but because truth invites truth. Everything that once seemed difficult becomes simpler. Every interaction becomes lighter. Even the people who once challenged you now appear in a different light. You don't change them. You change the way you see. You witness through stillness instead of judgment, through awareness instead of identity. And you realize that all of this is happening without you doing anything in the conventional sense. No tools, no techniques, no rehearsed affirmations. Just presence, just being. You begin to live in flow, not because you planned it, but because resistance has no place in you anymore. Flow is what remains when effort disappears. You look around and see the evidence of harmony. The signs don't need interpretation. You feel them. The music of life begins to return. The rhythm is not something you control, but something you hear now. It was always there. You had only been listening to the noise instead. In this space, you no longer need to define yourself. You no longer seek to convince yourself or others of your worth. You no longer build identities or collect roles. You live in the simplicity of presence. And presence, by its very nature, is magnetic. Presence, by its nature, is whole. This is the silent witness of harmony, the one who does nothing, yet allows everything. The one who moves without effort and speaks without noise. The one who knows that all things, in the end, are made perfect simply by being. Chapter 6. Divine Perfection Revealed. There comes a moment when the idea of perfection no longer feels abstract or unreachable. It is no longer something imagined as a future state or spiritual ideal. It is revealed now, in this moment, in the stillness of being. You are not reaching toward divine perfection. You are witnessing it. You are not trying to embody it. You are realizing it has always been who you are. Divine perfection is not the absence of flaws or the achievement of a polished identity. It is the pure awareness that underlies all appearances. It is untouched by thought, unchanged by time. It is the I am that remains still no matter what the world displays. And this I am is you, not the role, not the story, but the witness before it all. The world may continue to present itself in forms that seem chaotic, incomplete, or imbalanced. But you no longer see through the lens of imperfection. You see through presence. And presence knows that appearances are just that, forms passing through awareness. The being behind them is complete. What you are is whole, regardless of what the mind or the world claims. This recognition is not something to be proven. It cannot be verified through logic. It is known in silence, in stillness, in moments of pure presence when no thought interferes. In those moments, you feel the weight of self-definition lift. You feel the peace of not needing to be anything other than what is. And in that peace, divine perfection is revealed. You are no longer entangled with the old identity that suggested something was missing. That voice that insisted on doing more, proving more, achieving more, it quiets. It becomes background noise. And eventually, it dissolves. You no longer identify with the seeker, who always feels one step behind the truth. You know now that there was never any distance to travel. You are already there. Others may still operate from the illusion of becoming. They may still look for signs, for validation, for confirmation. They may ask how you arrived at such peace. They may wonder what you did to feel whole. But you will have no instructions to give them, only a reflection. You are not a teacher giving steps. You are a mirror of being, silently reminding them of what they already know. Being does not require perfection in form. It reveals perfection in essence. Even when emotions arise, even when circumstances shift, even when the body changes, the essence remains unchanged. The still I am presence is constant. It is the light behind every appearance. And once you see it clearly, you begin to witness it in others too. The illusion of separation begins to dissolve. What seemed like otherness becomes unity. The lines that divided people into roles, this one a stranger, that one a partner, begin to soften. There is only being, appearing as many. There is only the same light, taking different shapes. And in that realization, judgment falls away. Compassion arises naturally, without effort. You stop asking why things are the way they are. You stop needing to justify or explain existence. You stop searching for deeper meaning in the surface of life. Instead, you simply witness. You observe the play of form without needing to interfere. And what you see is harmony. Not the forced kind, but the kind that arises when nothing is out of place. Because nothing can be. This is the divine perfection you once searched for. Not a perfection based on the elimination of discomfort or flaw, but one based on the presence that holds it all. You see that peace was never the absence of chaos, but the stillness within it. Joy was never the result of circumstance, but the nature of awareness itself. And fulfillment was never earned. It was revealed in the letting go. You are that awareness. You are that joy. You are that perfection. Not becoming it, not working toward it, but abiding in it. And as you abide, the world begins to reflect it more clearly. People say they feel calm around you. They say your presence feels different. They say you carry something they can't quite name. And though they search for a reason, you know it is simply being. There is nothing left to prove. There is no role left to play. You are free, not because you escaped something, but because you remembered the truth, that there is no separation, that the person in mind never defined you, that the divine lives not above or beyond, but as the very awareness through which you see. Divine perfection is not a destination. It is not hidden in a future state. It is now. It is this breath, this presence, this seeing. It does not need you to be anything else. It only asks you to remember what is real and let go of what is not. In that letting go, life becomes quiet again. The noise fades, and the music beneath it all becomes audible. You walk not as someone reaching for truth, but as truth embodied. You speak not to persuade, but to express. You act not to impress, but as a natural extension of the stillness within. There is no more resistance, no more delay, no more waiting for the right moment. This is the moment. This is the perfection. And in this perfection, all things are in harmony, not because they are managed or arranged, but because they simply are, just as you are. Chapter 7. The Radiance of Effortless Being. You do not need to shine. You only need to stop dimming the light that already flows from within you. There is a radiance that cannot be manufactured, a glow that arises not from effort but from truth. It is not cultivated, it is revealed. And the moment you stop trying to be seen, you begin to be felt. Being is not a project. It is not a task on a list. It is not the result of practice. It is what remains when all effort ends. When the mind striving goes quiet, when the self-improvement narrative dissolves, when even the desire to be more finally burns out, there it is. Presence. Pure, undistorted. Still. This presence does not try to be magnetic, yet it draws others effortlessly. It does not try to persuade, yet its influence is undeniable. It does not perform, yet it resonates deeper than any scripted act. The radiance of being cannot be replicated because it is not a behavior. It is essence made visible. You no longer feel the need to correct your voice, to change your posture, to craft your image. All these were tools of the person in mind, believing it lacked something, believing it had to adjust itself to earn love or attention. But now you know you are already whole. And from that wholeness, the body softens. The tone of your voice settles. Your eyes carry a peace that needs no words. Others feel this. They may not understand why, but they feel safer, lighter, more themselves in your presence. They sense no judgment, no manipulation, no grasping, only the warmth of presence, only the ease of being. It is not that you control your energy. It is that you stop interfering with it. Your natural state is magnetic. Your natural being radiates peace. It is the activity of the mind that interrupts it. It is the imagined identity, the one trying to be enough, that dims what is already brilliant. When that image fades, light returns. You are not trying to radiate power. Power simply moves through you when you stop resisting it. True power is not loud. It does not dominate. It does not convince. It simply is. Unshakable, clear, and still. It does not depend on outcomes. It does not retreat in the face of challenge. It does not need approval to validate its existence. This power is presence. Others may call it confidence. Others may describe it as certainty. But those are just words pointing to a deeper truth, the full acceptance of being. When you stop fighting your nature, peace replaces tension. Stillness replaces noise. Clarity replaces confusion. And in that field of being, the world responds differently. You find that you no longer need to work so hard for alignment. What you need finds you. Conversations happen at the right time. People appear just as you think of them. Ideas surface without forcing them. The radiance of being is not just internal. It is mirrored in every aspect of your experience. This is not magic. This is coherence. When there is no internal conflict, when you are no longer divided against yourself, the external begins to reflect that unity. Life flows, not because you control it, but because you are no longer obstructing it. What once felt like resistance now feels like flow. Even your desires shift. What you used to chase begins to lose its pull. The need to be admired, to be validated, to prove your value, all of that begins to dissolve. Not because you suppress desire, but because fulfillment has already arrived. You are not lacking. You are not broken. You are not missing anything. You are fulfilled in being. In this fulfillment, joy arises without reason. You begin to smile without knowing why. You feel lightness in your step. You experience stillness in your breath. This is not the result of positive thinking or spiritual discipline. It is the natural outcome of no longer believing that something is wrong with you. What a relief to no longer fix yourself. What a freedom to let go of becoming. What a joy to simply be. And in that being, others join you. They feel the silence and remember themselves. They feel the ease and return to center. You do not need to guide them. You only need to be. And if thoughts arise suggesting otherwise, thoughts of lack, doubt, or separation, you observe them, but you do not become them. They may pass through, but they do not define you. You are the presence behind the thoughts. You are the light, not the shadows it casts. There is no urgency in being. There is no tension. There is only presence, flowing without interruption, radiating without effort. This is not a peak to reach. This is your home. This is your natural rhythm. You do not need to radiate outward to be magnetic. Simply rest. Simply remain. Your presence speaks louder than effort ever could. Your being, still and whole, does the work that effort never could accomplish. This is the quiet brilliance of you. Chapter 8. Presence without condition. There is a quiet truth that arises when all seeking ends. It is not something taught. It is not something added. It is something remembered. In that remembrance, you see clearly, presence was never conditional. It was never dependent on success, validation, timing, or identity. Presence is what remains when all conditions fall away. You no longer need the world to respond a certain way in order to feel whole. You no longer need people to affirm your value. You no longer need proof. The constant search for confirmation loses its urgency because you no longer mistake reflection for truth. You've returned to the source. You've returned to being, the person in mind, the one who was always trying to get it right, to improve, to impress. That figure grows quiet, and then it vanishes. You don't mourn its absence. You feel light without it. You're no longer burdened by the weight of needing to become. You have discovered that there is nothing to become. Being is already full. Awareness is already whole. And from this quiet wholeness, life unfolds. The world does not suddenly become perfect in appearance, but it is no longer required to. The need for life to behave a certain way dissolves. What remains is peaceful witnessing. What remains is unconditional presence. There is no longer resistance to what arises. Even discomfort, even chaos, is held within the space of awareness. There is no reaction, only observation. There is no judgment, only clarity. And in that clarity, everything softens. What once felt sharp now feels spacious. What once felt threatening now feels like movement in the wind, passing, impermanent, held. You begin to see how much life was shaped by the belief in lack. You see how deeply the identity of the person in mind clung to conditions. It needed others to respond a certain way. It needed goals to be met, images to be accepted, roles to be validated. But none of it was ever real. And now it's gone. There is only now, only this, only presence. And presence in its fullness asks nothing. It is not trying to create a better version of reality. It is simply allowing what is just as it is. This allowing is not passive. It is not resignation. It is the deepest strength. It is the strength of wholeness. The quiet knowing that nothing is missing. Others may still operate in pursuit. They may still seek wholeness outside themselves. They may still believe that something more is needed to be enough. But your presence is not disturbed by this. Your presence is not disturbed by anything. It welcomes all, holds all, resists nothing. It is enough. And this is what makes it magnetic. The absence of need, the absence of effort, the absence of seeking. In its place is openness. In its place is calm. In its place is the gentle, unshakable power of being. People sense this. They are drawn to it. They may not know why, but they feel it. And it's not something you do. It's something you are. It's not something you manage. It's something you allow. Your presence becomes a reminder to others of their own. Your stillness becomes an invitation to return to themselves, and so you walk through life not as someone seeking connection, but as a connection itself. Not as someone craving peace, but as the field in which peace is remembered. Not as someone trying to be magnetic, but as the embodiment of what was always magnetic to begin with. You do not need to change anything. You do not need to do anything. Presence is already perfect. Being is already whole. All that was ever asked of you was to stop pretending otherwise. You no longer chase. You no longer resist. You no longer divide yourself between who you are and who you think you need to become. The story ends here. What begins is the quiet, sacred truth of now. No conditions, no expectations, no becoming, only presence, only being, only the perfect stillness that has always been home.